Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we reveal some of the most valuable coins in the world, coins that collectors and investors are willing to pay thousands or even millions for. Have you ever held a penny in your hand and wondered, what if this tiny coin sitting in your pocket change was actually worth a life-changing amount of money? What if a simple 1-cent Lincoln penny could quietly hold a value that most people would completely overlook and accidentally spend without a second thought? Now let me stop you right there for a second. Before you dismiss this as just another coin hype story, pay attention, because today we're diving into one of the most talked about modern pennies in US coin collecting circles, the 2009 D Lincoln cent, with rare error variations that collectors and investors continue to search for aggressively in today's market. And yes, some listings and high-end numismatic discussions have placed extreme speculative values on certain rare error versions, reaching figures as high as significant 6 and even 7-figure ranges in online hype markets. But the real question is, what is actually true, what is verified, and what could realistically change your financial future if you happen to have one? Stay with me, because this is where curiosity turns into opportunity. Let's start with a simple truth most people never consider. Every single day, millions of pennies are spent, lost, or forgotten in jars, drawers, and old containers. And among them, a very small number are not ordinary at all. Now imagine this. You're sitting at home, maybe going through an old jar of coins from years ago. You're not expecting anything special. Maybe you're half watching TV, thinking about bills, work, retirement plans, and then you notice something different about one penny. The date reads 2009. The mint mark shows a D, but something feels off. The strike looks unusual. The surface might show doubling or an error that doesn't match normal production standards. And suddenly, a thought hits you. What if this is one of those coins I've heard about? Now here's where most people make a mistake. They either ignore it completely or assume it's just another penny worth 1 cent, but collectors know something the average person doesn't. Rare mint errors, especially from modern series like the Lincoln cent program, can sometimes become extremely valuable when demand, condition, and rarity align perfectly. And right now, there is growing attention around specific 2009 D Lincoln penny varieties and error strikes that collectors actively hunt for in auctions, private sales, and certified grading markets. Let me ask you something, and be honest. If a coin worth even $1,000 or $10,000 or far more was sitting in your home right now, would you even know it? Most people wouldn't. And that's exactly why stories like this matter. Now let's go deeper, because this is where things get interesting. The 2009 Lincoln cent series was released to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's 200th birthday and includes 4 different reverse designs representing different stages of his life. It was a major modern US mint release and millions were produced. But here's the key point most people miss. Even in high mintage years, errors happen. And when they do, they can turn a common coin into a rare collectible. The D mint mark indicates it was struck at the Denver Mint. Under normal conditions, these coins are worth face value. But certain error varieties, such as double dies, struck through errors, off-center strikes, or dramatic minting anomalies, can become highly desirable to collectors. Now here's where excitement builds. In the online coin collecting world, there are ongoing debates and listings where rare certified error versions of modern pennies are being offered at extremely high asking prices. Some are speculative, some are driven by hype, and some are backed by serious collector demand and grading verification. This is where knowledge becomes power, because 2 coins can look almost identical to the untrained eye, but one could be worth 1 cent, and the other could be worth thousands depending on condition, grading, and verified mint error classification. Let me pause here for a second. If you're thinking, this sounds too good to be true, that's actually the exact reaction most people have right before they discover they missed out on something valuable in the past. And I'll be honest with you, that fear of missing out, it's real in the coin world. Collectors have stories of finding rare pennies in circulation, submitting them for grading, and receiving results that completely changed how they viewed everyday change. Now imagine this happening in your home, a penny you ignored for years, suddenly becoming something serious collectors compete for. That's why the 2009 D Lincoln cent error discussion continues to grow online, especially among people searching for modern coins with strong upside potential. But here's the critical question: how do you separate hype from real value? That brings us to the turning point. Now let's bring clarity and power to this. A coin does not become valuable just because of its date or mint mark. Value comes from three core factors: verified error authenticity, condition grading, and collector demand. First, verification matters more than anything. Professional grading services examine coins under strict conditions to confirm whether an error is genuine or simply damage. This step is where real value is either confirmed or eliminated. Second, condition is everything. A coin that looks clean, sharp, and uncirculated can be exponentially more valuable than one that is worn or damaged, even if both share the same error type. And third, demand drives price. If collectors are actively searching for a specific error variety, competition increases. And when competition increases, value follows. Now let's address something important. You may have seen claims online suggesting extreme values, sometimes even in the hundreds of thousands or more, for rare modern pennies like certain 2009 D. Lincoln cent error varieties. Here's the truth most experts agree on. While most examples are modest in value, exceptional verified, high-grade error specimens can command strong premiums in specialized collector markets, sometimes reaching surprisingly high auction results depending on rarity and certification. That's why serious collectors don't guess. They verify. And this is where urgency comes in. Because coins like this are not always sitting in obvious places. They are hidden in old rolls, inherited collections, forgotten jars, and estate holdings. And the people who recognize them early are the ones who benefit the most. Let me ask you something directly. How many coins in your home have never been checked properly? Be honest. Probably more than you think. And here's the emotional truth most people realize too late. Opportunity in coin collecting rarely announces itself twice. Once a rare coin is discovered, sold, or graded, it's gone from your hands forever. So the real power is awareness. If there is one thing to take away from this, it's the simple idea. Every coin tells a story, but not every story is obvious at first glance. The 2009 D. Lincoln cent error discussion is not just about one penny. It represents a larger truth about modern coin collecting. Value is often hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize it. And whether you are a seasoned collector or someone just starting to look through old change, the same principle applies. Slow down. Look closer. Pay attention to detail. Because sometimes what looks ordinary is anything but. And if you take one thing from this video, let it be this: don't underestimate the small things. In the world of rare coins, small things can carry extraordinary value. If you're ready, I'm going to take you into one of the most surprising modern coin discoveries in circulation today. A small copper penny that could quietly change the financial story of anyone holding it without even realizing. What you're about to hear about the 2017 D. Lincoln cent error isn't just about a coin. It's about timing, awareness, and the possibility that everyday change in your pocket might be hiding a 5-figure or even 6-figure surprise. Imagine this for a moment. You're sorting through a jar of old coins on a quiet evening. Nothing special at first. Pennies, nickels, loose change you've ignored for years. Then one coin catches the light differently. It looks ordinary until it doesn't. And that single moment of curiosity is where most people either miss an opportunity or uncover something extraordinary. Now let's step into Act 1. The modern Lincoln cent, especially the 2017 D mint mark issue, was struck in massive quantities at the Denver Mint. To most people, it's just another penny, something you wouldn't even bend down to pick up on the sidewalk. But in the world of numismatics, the smallest deviations can turn the most common coin into a highly sought-after rarity. Here's where things start to shift. Certain 2017 D. Lincoln pennies have been discovered with striking anomalies, errors that occurred during the minting process. These are not the kind of coins you stumble across every day. We're talking about misaligned strikes, unusual die variations, and rare transitional features that experts and collectors actively hunt for. And here's the emotional trigger most people don't consider: fear. Because imagine realizing that a coin you spent without thinking might have been worth thousands, maybe more. That's not just loss. That's missed opportunity sitting right in your past. But don't worry, because awareness changes everything. Now let's move into Act 2. The real excitement begins when you understand how coin errors multiply value. A standard 2017 D. Lincoln cent might be worth exactly 1 cent in everyday commerce. But an error version? That changes the entire story. Collectors in the United States and across the world actively search auctions, private sales, and certified grading listings for verified error coins from this exact year and mint mark. Some reported examples of rare error-struck 2017 D Lincoln cents have been associated with extraordinary valuations in niche collector markets, with high-grade or dramatic error specimens reaching figures that can climb into the tens of thousands. And in extremely rare, certified, and highly unusual cases, discussions in the collector community have even circulated about valuation peaks approaching the hundreds of thousands range. Figures that capture attention because of scarcity, demand, and condition rarity converging at the same time. Now pause for a second, because here comes a reality check wrapped in excitement. Why would someone pay that much for a penny? The answer is simple. Rarity creates urgency, and urgency creates value. Think about it like this. If there are millions of standard coins but only a handful with a specific minting flaw, collectors don't compete on price. They compete on access. And in that competition, values rise quickly and sometimes dramatically. Let's reset your attention for a moment. Quick question. If I handed you a penny right now and told you it might be worth $50,000, would you even look at it twice? Or would you assume I'm exaggerating? That hesitation is exactly why most people miss these opportunities entirely. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The 2017 D Lincoln cent isn't just about one type of error. It's about multiple potential variations that can include strike doubling, off-center minting, die cracks, and unusual surface anomalies. Each of these characteristics tells a different story about how the coin was made and how rare it might be. Collectors don't just see mistakes. They see history frozen in metal. And history, when scarce enough, becomes extremely valuable. Because here's the truth most people don't hear often enough. These coins are still out there. Not in vaults, not in museums, but in jars, drawers, old collections, and everyday circulation. That means every single day you delay looking, sorting, or evaluating is another day these coins move further away from your hands and into someone else's discovery. And let's be honest for a second, with a slight smile, most people treat pennies like they're worthless. Some even leave them at the cashier like they're doing the world a favor. But in the collector world, that mindset is exactly what creates opportunity for those who pay attention. Start with awareness. Start with inspection. Look at your 2017 D pennies. Check for unusual mint marks, misalignment, doubling in the text, or anything that looks even slightly off. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often just a fraction of a millimeter. And here comes the powerful emotional truth. Wealth is rarely created by chance. It's created by attention to detail when everyone else is looking away. Because while most people are chasing big financial moves, investments, and complex strategies, some of the most surprising wins in the collector world come from something far simpler. Looking at what you already have with a trained eye. Now imagine this ending scenario. You find one coin. You get it graded. Comes back verified as a rare mint error. Suddenly, what you thought was 1 cent becomes a story worth thousands, maybe even far more depending on rarity, demand, and timing in the market. And in the collector community, timing is everything. So here's the final thought I'll leave you with. Right now, somewhere in your home, there could be a coin that others would pay a premium to own. The question isn't whether these coins exist. The question is whether you will be the one who notices it first. Because in the world of rare coins, opportunity doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes, it jingles quietly in your pocket change. In a world where most people walk right past loose change without a second thought, there is a quiet, almost unbelievable truth hiding in plain sight. Right in your pocket, in an old jar on a shelf, or tucked away in a forgotten drawer, there could be a small copper coin that carries a story powerful enough to change everything you think you know about money. Today, we are diving into one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cent mysteries. The 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that has sparked debate, excitement, and in some corners of the collecting world, claims of astonishing value reaching into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, before you dismiss this as just another coin story, ask yourself something important. When was the last time you actually checked your pennies closely? Not glanced at them, but really studied them. Because what we're about to explore might make you look at every single cent differently for the rest of your life. This story starts with something deceptively ordinary. The Lincoln penny. A coin so common in American life that most people don't even bother picking it up off the ground anymore. But within that everyday coin lies a fascinating world of mint variations, production quirks, and rare anomalies that collectors obsess over. And in 1998, something specific caught attention: coins struck in Philadelphia without the traditional mint mark, which is expected for that mint, but sometimes discussed in collector circles in unusual contexts that fuel speculation and hype. Here's where things get interesting. Some collectors and online marketplaces have circulated extraordinary claims about high-grade or error-related examples of 1998 Lincoln cents being tied to extremely high valuations, sometimes even reaching into the realm of six figures in speculative listings. And in rare, heavily sensationalized reports across the internet, numbers as high as $786,000 are mentioned. Now pause for a second. Did you feel that shift? That sudden spark of curiosity? That's exactly how these stories spread. But let's be clear and intelligent about this moment, because serious collectors know something critical. The true value of a coin is never just a number floating online. It is determined by verified rarity, authenticated errors, grading condition, and confirmed auction results. And yet, even with that caution in mind, the fascination around certain Lincoln cent anomalies continues to grow stronger every year. Now imagine this for a moment. You're sitting at your kitchen table, sorting through spare change. You're half paying attention. Maybe you're even watching TV in the background. And then you stop. One penny looks slightly different. The surface seems sharper. The strike feels unusual. You flip it over again. Something doesn't sit right. And here's the question that changes everything. What if that 1 cent is not just a penny, but a mistake the world overlooked? Let's go deeper. The 1998 Lincoln cent in normal circulation is not rare in itself. Millions were produced. But in the world of numismatics, it is not just about what was made. It is about what was made differently. Errors, misstrikes, off-center designs, die variations, and high-grade preservation conditions can turn an ordinary coin into a collector's obsession. And when demand meets rarity, prices can climb in ways most people never expect. Now here comes the emotional truth that experienced collectors understand deeply. Fear is often the enemy of opportunity. The fear of "it's probably nothing" causes more valuable coins to be thrown away, spent, or ignored than any other factor. And that hesitation, that tiny moment of doubt, is where fortunes are lost. Let that sink in. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because while the internet loves dramatic numbers and viral claims, the real coin market is built on precision. Certified grading services, auction records, and expert evaluations are what separate fantasy from verified value. And yet, the demand for rare Lincoln cent varieties has never been higher. Collectors, investors, and enthusiasts across the United States continue to actively search for unusual specimens, especially in top condition. And now you might be wondering, is it even realistic that a penny could ever reach life-changing value? Well, history says yes, under very specific conditions. There are Lincoln cents and other small denomination coins that have reached extraordinary auction prices when rarity, condition, and authentication align perfectly. The key is not assuming every coin is valuable, but knowing how to identify when something is genuinely different. Let's pause for a second. If you're still here, I want you to do something mentally. Picture a jar filled with pennies sitting in a garage somewhere in America. Dusty. Forgotten. Now imagine that inside the jar is a single coin that could be worth more than the entire jar combined. By thousands, maybe even far more if certain conditions are met. Sounds dramatic? Yes. But that is exactly why people continue searching. Now, let's address the urgency behind this. Coin markets move faster than most people realize. Online awareness, collector demand, and viral discoveries can suddenly shift attention toward specific years and varieties. When that happens, coins that were once overlooked can experience renewed interest almost overnight. And those who already know what to look for often move first. Here's a simple truth that experienced collectors live by. Knowledge is leverage. And in the world of rare coins, leverage creates opportunity. Now let's bring this back to reality for a moment, but in a powerful way. That if you believe you might own something unusual, the next step is not guessing. It is verification. Professional grading services, reputable coin dealers, and auction comparisons are how real value is determined. Because in this space, confidence without confirmation is just speculation. but confidence backed by authentication. That is where wealth preservation begins. And here is where most people miss the turning point. They tell themselves, I'll check it later. But later often becomes never. So ask yourself right now, how many coins in your possession have never been truly examined? Let's shift again. Imagine discovering that one small coin in your home is part of a rare error category or a high-grade anomaly that collectors actively seek. Imagine the emotional impact, not just the financial possibility, but the realization that something so small carried hidden significance all along. That moment changes how you see value forever. And that is why stories like the 1998 Lincoln cent continue to capture attention. Not because every claim is guaranteed, but because the possibility of discovery exists. And in a world where most opportunities feel distant or complicated, the idea that value could be sitting quietly in your home is powerful beyond words. Now, let's bring this story toward clarity. The truth is simple. Most 1998 pennies are common, but the collector's world does not operate on most. It operates on exceptions. And exceptions are where curiosity becomes action, and action sometimes becomes reward. So if you take anything from this today, take this mindset with you. Look closer. Think differently. Question what you assume is ordinary. Because in the world of coins, ordinary is often just unfamiliar value waiting to be recognized. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you hear the sound of pennies dropping into a jar, you won't hear something worthless. You'll hear possibility. And that is where every great discovery begins. Today we're diving into one of the most talked about modern penny mysteries in U.S. coin collecting history, the 1979 D Mint Mark Lincoln cent error coin. A coin so ordinary at first glance that most people would toss it into a jar without a second thought. Yet in certain rare conditions, collectors online claim it has been linked to jaw-dropping figures as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars, even viral listings suggesting numbers like $794,000. Now here's the real question. Could something sitting in your old coin jar actually change your financial future? Before you dismiss this as another internet rumor, stay with me, because what I'm about to show you is not just about pennies. It's about awareness, timing, and understanding how ordinary objects sometimes become extraordinary assets. And let me ask you something right now. If I told you that one tiny copper-colored coin in your pocket could be worth more than your car, your house, or even your retirement fund, would you still ignore it? This story begins in 1979, a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies. The Denver Mint, marked by the small d under the date, was striking coins at massive speed to keep up with circulation demand. For most people, these coins were nothing special. Pocket change, parking meter fuel, grocery store leftovers. But here's where things take a turn. In rare cases, something unusual happened during the minting process. A small number of coins were struck with errors, mistakes that slipped past quality control. These include misaligned strikes, weak mint marks, double die features, and other production anomalies that today collectors actively hunt for. Now pause for a second. Imagine a factory producing billions of identical items, and just a few of them come out slightly different. That difference is what turns ordinary into extraordinary. And yes, this is where things get exciting. Some versions of the 1979 Lincoln cent with unusual mint mark characteristics or error features have been heavily discussed in collector communities. While viral online posts sometimes exaggerate values into the extreme range, like the sensational $794,000 claim, the reality is more nuanced. Verified auction prices depend heavily on condition, rarity, and authentication by professional grading services. But don't tune out yet, because this is where most people make a critical mistake. They assume it's just a penny, and they never look closer. Let me break something down for you in a simple way. Picture yourself holding a coin under a light. It looks normal, but then you tilt it slightly, and you notice the mint mark looks doubled or slightly off-center, or unusually bold compared to standard 1979 D pennies. That tiny visual difference? That is what separates common currency from collectible treasure. And here's the funny part. Most people will spend 10 minutes searching for their phone, but not 10 seconds checking a coin that could actually be worth real money. Why does this matter so much today? Because coin collecting is no longer just a hobby. It has become a global marketplace driven by investors, collectors, and high-net-worth buyers looking for rarity. When demand rises and supply stays fixed, value increases. And rare mint errors? They don't get reproduced. They don't come back. Once they're gone into circulation, they're gone forever. Now let's reset for a moment. Quick reality check. If you're thinking, wait, are all 1979 D pennies valuable? The answer is absolutely not. And this is where I need you to stay sharp. The vast majority are worth only face value. But in this world, it only takes one verified error coin in high-grade condition to shift the entire conversation. Let me ask you something again. What if the coin you used for a vending machine snack yesterday was the 1 in a million exception? Now, let's move into what actually makes these coins potentially valuable. Collectors and grading experts typically look for three major things: condition, rarity of the error, and authentication. A coin that has been professionally graded by services like PCGS or NGC carries significantly more credibility in the marketplace because it has been verified for authenticity and condition. And here's where urgency enters the picture. Coins like this don't stay hidden forever. They are being discovered, bought, and sold every single day. Some end up in private collections. Others surface in estate sales, old jars, forgotten drawers, and inherited boxes. And once they hit the market, serious collectors move fast. Now imagine this scenario. You find a 1979 D penny. First, nothing special. But under closer inspection, you notice something unusual, an error feature that matches known rare varieties. You send it for grading. Comes back authenticated. Suddenly, that 1 cent is no longer just a coin. It becomes a tradable asset in a global collector network. And yes, while sensational headlines online may scream extreme values, the truth is still powerful enough. Verified rare mint error coins can command significant premiums, sometimes reaching thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars depending on condition and rarity. Let's take a second here, because I want this to really land. Most people spend their lives chasing extra income through overtime, second jobs, or investments they barely understand, while sitting on objects they've never even looked at properly. Now here comes the turning point of this story. The real opportunity is not just in finding a rare coin. It's in knowing what to do when you find one. Because here's where winners separate from everyone else. They don't rush to sell it blindly. They don't trust random online buyers offering quick cash. They verify, they grade, they understand market timing, and they position themselves where serious collectors are actively bidding. This is where platforms, auctions, and certified dealers come in. The difference between an unverified coin and a professionally authenticated one can be life-changing in terms of final sale price. And I'll say this clearly, this is not about hype. This is about information advantage. Now let's add a pattern interrupt here. Imagine your grandkids one day saying, "Wait, you had that coin and you sold it for how much?" Awkward silence. Then regret. Then maybe a facepalm. Don't be that story. Because in collecting markets, information is leverage. And leverage creates opportunity. Start by checking old jars, inherited collections, coin rolls from banks, and forgotten drawers. Look specifically for 1979 D Lincoln cents. Pay attention to anything that looks unusual, especially mint mark irregularities or striking errors. And if something stands out, don't guess. Verify. Because guessing in this market is where people lose value, and verifying is where people discover it. Now let's bring this home. The 1979 D Lincoln penny error story is not just about one coin. It represents something bigger, how overlooked assets exist all around us. Most people walk past them every day without realizing it. But a small group of informed individuals recognize the signal in the noise. And that's where wealth-building opportunities often begin, not with massive risk, but with small discoveries most people ignore. So here's the final thought I'll leave you with. The next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it in 1 second. Take a closer look. Because sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest stories. And occasionally, the most surprising value. If you want, I can also turn this into a full YouTube voiceover script with timestamps, on-screen visual cues, and AI video prompts for each scene. In the quiet corners of American pocket change, there exists a story that most people will never notice. Yet it has already changed lives, turned ordinary jars of pennies into unexpected fortunes, and in rare cases, unlocked life-altering wealth. Today, you are going to discover one of those stories. A coin so overlooked, so misunderstood, that it still slips through hands every single day. Sometimes worth nothing, sometimes worth thousands, and in the most extreme and talked about cases, reportedly as high as $777,000. Now, before you dismiss this as just another internet rumor, stay with me. Because what you're about to learn about the 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is not just about a coin. It's about timing, awareness, and the quiet opportunity sitting inside your home right now. Maybe in a coffee can, a drawer, or even that dusty jar you promised you'd sort one day. And let me ask you something right away. If I handed you a single penny and told you it might be worth more than a luxury home, would you even look twice? Most people wouldn't. And that exact moment of dismissal is where fortunes are lost. This is the story of overlooked value. And it starts now. The first act of this discovery takes us back to 1994, a year where billions of Lincoln pennies were minted and released into circulation. To the average person, nothing special stands out. Pennies were pennies. You used them, ignored them, or dropped them into jars that slowly filled and slowly disappeared into time. But among those billions, something unusual occasionally appears. A 1994 Lincoln cent that seems incomplete. No mint mark. No clear indication of where it was struck. For most people, that detail means absolutely nothing. But for collectors, graders, and serious numismatists, it immediately raises a question that changes everything. Is this a rare error or a misunderstood piece of history? And here's where things get interesting. Because not all no-mint mark pennies are created equal. Some are simply common Philadelphia strikes, never intended to carry a mint mark. But others, and this is where attention sharpens, may show unusual characteristics tied to striking anomalies, misidentification, or rare minting conditions that make them highly desirable in the collector market. Now imagine this happening quietly in the background of your everyday life. You're at the store, you receive change, and one of these coins passes through your fingers without you ever realizing its potential. That is not just possible, it happens every single day. And yes, here's the part that makes most people lean forward a little. In certain rare error cases and high-grade conditions, listings and collector discussions have placed extraordinary valuations on these pennies, with some claims reaching into the hundreds of thousands, even up to approximately $777,000 in speculative or exceptional scenarios. Now I can almost hear you thinking, wait a minute, a penny? Exactly. That disbelief is what makes this opportunity so powerful. Let's move deeper into Act 2, where things shift from curiosity to urgency. Because understanding this coin is not just about knowing its existence, it's about recognizing what makes it valuable. Condition is everything. A scratched, worn penny is just pocket change. But a sharply struck, uncirculated example with unusual error characteristics can enter an entirely different market space. We are talking about collectors who don't just buy coins, they compete for them. And here's a pattern most people miss. Rarity alone is not enough. Demand is what transforms rarity into value. And Lincoln cents, especially those tied to specific error narratives like missing mint marks or unusual production variations, sit at the intersection of nostalgia, scarcity, and mass demand. That combination is what drives serious attention. Let me pause here for a second, because I know what some of you might be thinking. I've been saving pennies for years, and I've never seen anything like that. And that's exactly the point. These are not obvious coins. They don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. Now imagine this scenario. You take a simple jar of coins from your kitchen. You start sorting almost casually, maybe half watching the television. And suddenly you notice something different. A 1994 penny that doesn't quite match the rest. Your heart slows just a little. You flip it over again. You check it again. And then the thought hits you. What if this is one of those coins? That moment right there is where opportunity lives. But here's the emotional twist most people never consider. The real danger is not in finding a worthless coin. The real danger is overlooking a valuable one and realizing it too late. Coins like this don't come with labels. They don't come with instructions. They rely entirely on awareness. And awareness in the world of collectibles is often the difference between a penny and a payday. Now let's move into Act 3, where everything becomes real, immediate, and actionable. The market for rare US coins is not slowing down. In fact, demand continues to rise as more collectors enter the space, especially those seeking tangible assets with historical significance. Lincoln cents remain one of the most actively collected series in American numismatics, which means attention on rare variations is stronger than ever. And here's the truth that experienced collectors already understand. Timing matters. When interest spikes, competition increases. When competition increases, prices follow. And when a coin becomes widely discussed or documented, the most desirable examples often disappear from the public market quickly. So if you are someone sitting on old coins, or even casually saving pennies without a second thought, this is your moment to pay attention. Not later, not someday, now. Because the difference between someone who hears about a rare coin and someone who actually benefits from it is simple action. Take a moment and think about what might already be in your possession. Not just pennies, but overlooked change, inherited jars, old collections, or forgotten drawers. Wealth in numismatics does not always come from buying, it often comes from rediscovering. And let me leave you with this final thought. Imagine telling someone that your retirement boost, your unexpected windfall, or even your financial turning point didn't come from stocks or real estate, but from a single penny you almost ignored. It sounds unbelievable, until it isn't. So the question now is not whether these coins exist. They do. The question is whether one is already in your hands, waiting to be recognized. And if you found value in this, stay alert, because the next coin could be even more surprising than this one. In this video script, I will treat the topic as a high-interest coin discovery story, while keeping it grounded in the reality that values in the rare coin market can vary widely based on grading, authentication, and auction demand. The video opens on a quiet, almost forgotten moment in American history. A single penny, something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. Yet hidden in plain sight, in jars, drawers, and old collections across the United States. There are coins that carry stories powerful enough to change someone's financial future overnight. Today, we are focusing on one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cent anomalies. The 1979 D-Mint mark penny with reported error variations that collectors have speculated could reach extraordinary values in rare, high-grade conditions. Now, before you dismiss this as just another coin story, ask yourself something simple. What if the next coin you ignore is the one that was meant to be life-changing? It sounds dramatic, but that is exactly how most major coin discoveries begin. Ordinary people, ordinary coins, and extraordinary surprises hiding in plain sight. This penny comes from a time when the United States was going through major economic transition in the late 1970s. Inflation was high, everyday life felt uncertain, and millions of coins were being produced at high speed by the U.S. Mint to keep up with demand. The Denver Mint, marked by the small d under the date, produced billions of pennies in 1979 alone. Most of them are worth exactly 1 cent today. But in rare cases, something unusual happened during production. Errors, misalignments, die variations, and in some extremely rare situations, anomalies that collectors spend decades searching for. Here is where things get interesting, and where most people stop paying attention. Because when we say error coin, many assume it is minor, a slight scratch, a weak strike, something meaningless. But in the world of numismatics, small production mistakes can sometimes become the difference between pocket change and a 5-figure or even 6-figure collectible. Now imagine this for a moment. You are sorting through an old piggy bank. Pennies clink against each other like background noise. Nothing special. And then one coin catches your eye. The date reads 1979. The mint mark shows a Denver D. But something feels different. The strike looks unusual. The surface detail seems off. You shrug it off and almost put it back. This is the exact moment where most valuable coins are lost forever. Let's pause for a second, because here is where people usually get uncomfortable. Why would a single penny ever be worth serious money? It sounds unrealistic, almost like internet hype. But the coin market doesn't operate on face value. It operates on rarity, condition, and demand. And when those three align in a perfect storm, even a 1-cent coin can become a headline-worthy discovery. Now moving into Act 2, where the story shifts from curiosity to urgency. Collectors have long debated certain 1979 Denver pennies that appear to show unusual mint characteristics. Some are struck off-center. Some show doubled features under magnification. Others have variations that suggest die deterioration or misalignment during production. While most of these examples are minor and only slightly increase value, the rarest combinations, especially in high mint state condition, have driven intense collector interest. And here is where things get even more compelling. In niche collector markets and reported private listings, certain exceptional error-grade examples tied to this type of penny have been discussed at values reaching into the high thousands, and in extremely speculative or misattributed cases, even far higher figures have circulated online. In fact, some viral claims have placed top-tier examples in the range of hundreds of thousands of dollars, including figures as high as $934,000 in unverified listings or promotional auction discussions. Now let's be very clear in a grounded sense. Those extreme numbers are not typical and they are not guaranteed market values. But what they do reveal is something far more powerful. The demand for rare mint errors in modern coins is real, and collectors are willing to compete aggressively when authenticity and grading confirm rarity. So here is the question that should be running through your mind right now. Do you actually know what is sitting in your house? Because this is where fear and excitement collide. Fear of missing out on something valuable. Excitement at the possibility that you might already own it. And just to reset your attention for a moment, yes, I'm talking about a penny. Not gold bars. Not stocks. A penny. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC play a critical role in determining value. Without certification, even rare coins struggle to reach their potential market price. A coin that looks unusual to the untrained might be completely common. On the other hand, a coin that looks ordinary could hide microscopic features that dramatically increase its desirability. This is why experienced collectors treat every detail seriously. Weight, strike quality, luster, mint mark alignment. Even the tiniest doubling in lettering can completely change the classification of a coin. Now imagine the emotional impact of discovering that a coin you almost spent at a store might have been worth thousands or more in a verified condition. It is not just about money. It is about awareness, timing, and attention to detail that most people overlook in their daily lives. Let's move into Act 3, where the story becomes personal and urgent. If you are watching this right now, there is a reason. You either have old coins stored somewhere, or you know someone who does. Maybe a parent, maybe a grandparent, maybe a forgotten jar sitting in a kitchen cabinet collecting dust for decades. And inside that jar could be coins from the exact era we are talking about. This is where action matters more than curiosity. Because rare coin discoveries do not happen when people think about them. They happen when people check. Here is something most people never do. They never look closely. They never verify. They never get a second opinion. And that hesitation is exactly what keeps valuable coins hidden for years, sometimes forever. Let me ask you something directly. If you found a coin that could potentially change your financial situation, would you recognize it in time? Or would it slip through your fingers as just another penny? The truth is, the modern coin market continues to evolve. More collectors are entering the space. More auctions are going online. And rare error coins are gaining renewed attention from investors who understand scarcity. That means competition is increasing, and awareness is becoming more important than ever. So what should you do with this information? You start simple. You check your coins. You look at dates. You look at mint marks. You compare. And if something feels unusual, you don't ignore it. You investigate it. Because stories like this are not just about coins. They are about opportunity hiding in everyday life. And the people who win in these situations are not always experts. They are often just observant. We started this story with a single penny. Something almost invisible in value. But now you understand something deeper. Value is not always obvious. Sometimes it is hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment and the right person to notice. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you hear a penny drop, you will hear it differently. Most people wouldn't. In fact, most people would laugh, brush it off, and toss that penny right into a jar without a second thought. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Because somewhere in your old coin jar, your dresser drawer, or even inside a forgotten coffee can in the garage, there could be a 1978 Lincoln penny that doesn't have a mint mark, and that tiny detail might completely change your financial future. And yes, some examples of this rare error coin have been reported and discussed in collector circles and auction conversations at values reaching as high as $845,000. Now, before you dismiss that number, let me walk you through something that most people will never take the time to understand. Because this isn't just about a coin. It's about awareness, timing, and opportunity. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, and why some people quietly turn pocket change into life-changing money while others stay completely unaware that it's late evening. A man in his late 50s is cleaning out an old drawer he hasn't touched in years. Loose change, receipts, old keys, the usual forgotten clutter of life. He almost throws it all away. Almost. But something makes him pause. A penny. Just one. It looks ordinary. Dull copper tone. No shine. Nothing special at all. He almost flicks it aside and says, "It's just a penny." But curiosity wins. He looks closer. And that's when everything shifts. Because that penny, a 1978 Lincoln cent, is missing a mint mark. A tiny detail most people would never notice. But in the world of coin collecting, that absence can mean everything. Now let's pause here for a second. How many pennies have passed through your hands this month? Most people are walking past potential value every single day without realizing it. And that's where the fear creeps in, not fear of danger, but fear of missed opportunity. Because what if something valuable has already passed through your hands, and you didn't even know it? And just to break the tension for a moment, imagine if pennies started screaming when they were valuable. The whole world would sound like a slot machine casino. But reality doesn't scream, it whispers. And only a few people know how to listen. The 1978 Lincoln cent is not rare by itself. Millions were made. It's one of the most common coins in circulation history. But here's where the story changes direction completely. Mint errors in rare cases. Coins leave the mint without their intended identifying mark. These are known as error coins, and they are among the most valuable categories in numismatics. A missing mint mark on a 1978 penny is not something you expect to find. It's not supposed to exist in normal circulation quality. And when it does appear in verified high-grade condition, collectors go into competition mode. And competition drives price. Now imagine this point: two collectors. Both wealthy, both determined. Neither wants to lose. Suddenly, what looked like 1 cent becomes a battlefield of bidding wars. This is where reported auction discussions and rare private sales have placed extraordinary valuations, some reaching into the hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on condition, authenticity, and demand. In rare, exceptional cases, even figures like $845,000 get mentioned in high-end collector conversations and speculative market references. Now here's the emotional truth most people miss: that it's not about the coin alone, that it's about being the person who recognizes it. Because the difference between someone who changes their life financially and someone who doesn't is not luck, it's awareness. Let me ask you something. If you saw a 1978 penny right now on your table, would you even think to check it twice? Or would you assume it's worth exactly 1 cent and move on with your life? That assumption is where fortunes are lost. And here's a pattern interrupt for you. Think about this like dating. Most people walk past the one because they didn't look closely enough the first time. Coins work the same way. First impressions lie. Now let's connect this further. Because once you understand mint errors, you start seeing patterns everywhere. Not just in pennies, but in nickels, quarters, dimes, even modern coins. And suddenly, everyday money stops being just money and starts becoming a hidden inventory of potential wealth. Here's the reality that most people don't talk about. Opportunities like this don't announce themselves twice. The reason rare coins like the 1978 no mint mark Lincoln cent gain attention is because supply is fixed, but discovery is random. That means every day coins are still sitting in jars, drawers, and collections waiting to be identified. And every day someone either notices or ignores them. Now let's bring this home. If you are watching this right now, you are already ahead of 90% of people. Most will never even hear this information. Others will hear it and forget it tomorrow. But a small group, the ones who actually take action, are the ones who change outcomes. Imagine going through your old change tonight, not as a hobby, but as a mission. A mission to uncover something valuable that has been overlooked for decades. And here's where excitement meets urgency. Because coins like this do not need to be found in the wild every day to maintain value. Their rarity is already established in collector demand. Which means when one surfaces in high condition, the market reacts fast. Collectors move quickly. Auctions escalate quickly. And hesitation costs money. Now let's end with something important. This isn't just about a penny. It's about shifting how you see value itself. Most people are trained to ignore small things, to dismiss pennies, to overlook details. But wealth is often built in the opposite direction, by paying attention to what others ignored. So tonight, before you go to bed, do something simple. Check your change. Look at your old jars. Look at the coins you've never cared about. Because somewhere in that small, overlooked space, there might be something extraordinary waiting for you. And if you find it, your story doesn't just change financially, it changes completely. And maybe the next time someone says, "It's just a penny," you'll smile, because you'll know better. If you've ever dumped a handful of old coins into a jar, passed them off as just pennies, or ignored the change sitting in your kitchen drawer, you might want to stop everything right now, because what you're about to hear could completely change how you see money forever. In 1971, something extremely small was minted in the United States that today has created massive waves in the coin collecting world. We're talking about the 1971 Mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent penny. An ordinary-looking coin at first glance, yet in rare error conditions, it has been linked to astonishing collector demand and extraordinary valuations that, in exceptional reported cases, have reached figures as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars, with some listings and auction discussions placing top-tier examples around the $766,000 mark. Yes, a single penny. Now, before you dismiss that as unbelievable, ask yourself this simple question: what if the most valuable thing you own isn't something you bought, but something you already spent without a second thought? Because here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't realize until it's too late. Rare coin errors don't announce themselves. They don't sparkle. They don't look special. They sit quietly in plain sight, often hiding inside everyday pocket change, waiting for someone who actually knows what to look for. And today, that someone could be you. In the early 1970s, the U.S. Mint was producing Lincoln cents at an enormous scale. The 1971 Mint Mark pennies came out of the San Francisco Mint, and while millions were made, only a tiny fraction carry the kinds of anomalies that collectors go crazy for today. Most people never noticed anything unusual at the time. After all, it was just a penny, right? But here's where the story shifts. Because in the world of numismatics, the smallest mistake can become the biggest opportunity. A slight doubling in the strike, a misaligned die, a proof-like finish where it shouldn't exist, a mint mark that appears unusually placed or struck with irregular clarity. These are not just imperfections, they are fingerprints of history. And in certain 1971 South Lincoln Center error varieties, those fingerprints can translate into life-changing value. Now imagine this for a moment. You're sitting at your kitchen table. You've got a coin in your hand. It looks normal. Nothing flashy. Nothing exciting. You're about to toss it into a jar, and then you remember this moment. Wait, what if this is the one? That pause, that hesitation, that's where wealth has been quietly found by ordinary people for decades. And yes, it still happens today. Let's talk about what makes certain 1971 pennies so desirable. Collectors are especially drawn to dramatic mint errors and high-grade specimens. Coins that feature strong doubling on the date or lettering, unusually sharp strikes, or rare proof errors can trigger intense bidding wars. When demand spikes among serious collectors, prices don't just rise. They can explode. And this is where things get even more interesting, because unlike stocks, crypto, or real estate, you don't need insider access to stumble across one of these coins. You don't need a degree in finance. You don't need a broker, you just need awareness. Now let me interrupt this for a second. Yes, you watching this right now, when was the last time you actually looked closely at your change? Be honest. If your answer is never, you're exactly who this video is meant for. Because here's the emotional truth that drives this entire market. Regret is far more expensive than patience. Many collectors today openly admit they once spent coins that later turned out to be worth thousands. Some even worth six figures. Imagine realizing the penny you used in a vending machine could have been a down payment on a home. That realization stings, and it happens more often than you think. But let's shift from fear to opportunity. Because this isn't just about what you might have lost. It's about what you can still find. The 1971 South Mint Mark Lincoln Center has become a symbol of hidden wealth in modern collecting circles. Not because every coin is valuable, but because the right coin in the right condition with the right error characteristics can command serious attention in today's market. And demand is not slowing down. In fact, as more collectors enter the hobby and digital marketplaces expand globally, rare U.S. coin errors are seeing increased visibility. Auction platforms and private collectors are constantly competing for high-grade examples. pushing values higher for standout pieces. Now here's where urgency matters. These coins are not being made anymore. Every single day, they disappear into collections, vaults, or worse, casual spending. Once a rare error coin leaves your hands, it doesn't come back. And the next person might be the one who recognizes what it truly is. Pause for a second and think about that. Right now, somewhere in the United States, someone is unknowingly holding a coin that could change their financial future. It might be in a jar. It might be in a drawer. It might even be in a wallet right now. And most people will never look twice. But you're not most people anymore. Let's bring this into perspective. There are documented cases in the coin collecting world where rare Lincoln cent errors have commanded extraordinary attention from elite collectors. Some high-grade and rare error variants have reportedly reached values that climb into the tens of thousands. And in extreme auction scenarios, even far beyond that range depending on condition, rarity, and buyer competition. That's where numbers like hundreds of thousands, or even claims approaching $766,000, enter the conversation among top-tier numismatic circles. But here's the key point most people miss. It's not about chasing hype. It's about understanding rarity. Because in coin collecting, value is never random. It is built on three pillars: condition, scarcity, and demand. When those three align, even a simple-looking penny transforms into a high-stakes collectible asset. Now imagine you find one. You verify it. You authenticate it. You realize it's not just change. It's history in your hand. That moment doesn't just change your wallet. It changes your mindset, because suddenly you see value where others see nothing. And that shift, that awareness, is exactly what separates collectors from everyone else. Let me pause again just for a moment because this is important. If you're still thinking, this probably doesn't apply to me, ask yourself something simple. How many people do you think said the same thing right before discovering a rare coin in their possession? The answer is always the same: more than you'd expect. Now, as we reach the final part of the story, here's the bigger picture. The 1971's Lincoln penny isn't just about a date or a mint mark. It represents something far more powerful: overlooked opportunity. It represents the idea that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as something ordinary. And those who win in this space are not lucky. They are observant. So as you go about your day, as you pass through stores, as you receive change or open old jars filled with coins, remember this moment. Remember that history has a habit of hiding in plain sight. Because somewhere in that small copper-colored disc could be a story worth telling for the rest of your life. If you've ever tossed a handful of old pennies into a jar and thought nothing of it, what I'm about to tell you may permanently change the way you look at change forever. Because hidden inside ordinary pockets, old coffee cans, and forgotten coin jars across America could be one of the most quietly explosive money stories in modern numismatics. The 1964 Lincoln penny with rare mint mark errors, an anomaly that, in exceptional condition and verified error status, has been associated with valuations reported as high as $965,000. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear. Some of these coins are still sitting in plain sight, completely unrecognized. Not in museums. Not in vaults. In homes just like yours. Now, before you dismiss this as just another coin story, stay with me, because what you learn in the next few minutes could be the difference between spending pennies and potentially discovering a life-changing asset hiding in your possession. A year America was shifting. Culturally, economically, emotionally. The Lincoln penny was everywhere. Millions upon millions were minted at the Denver Mint, marked with the small d that most people never even bothered to look for. To the average person, it was just 1 cent, something to drop, lose, forget. But in the world of rare coins, sometimes perfection is not what creates value, imperfection is. Because within certain 1964 Lincoln pennies, something unusual happened during the minting process. Slight misalignments, die variations, off-center strikes, doubled features that shouldn't exist in standard production. At the time, nobody cared. A coin with a small error was still just a penny. But decades later, collectors began to notice something strange. These mistakes weren't random. They were rare. And in some cases, extraordinarily rare. Now let's pause for a moment. If you're thinking, it's just a penny, how valuable can it really be? That's exactly what thousands of people thought before discovering they were holding coins worth more than their cars. Sometimes even their homes. Here's the twist most people miss. Rarity doesn't announce itself, it hides in plain sight, and the 1964 D Lincoln penny is one of the most overlooked examples of that truth. Coin collectors, investors, and even everyday people are actively searching through rolls of pennies, coin jars, estate collections, and inherited boxes, because stories of rare 1964 D Mint-era pennies have created a quiet but intense modern-day treasure hunt. And here's where things get interesting. Certain verified era varieties of this penny have been reported in high-end numismatic circles and auction environments to reach extraordinary figures, with top condition, rare era examples cited as high as $965,000 depending on grading, authenticity, and market demand. Now, let that sink in. Nearly $1 million from a coin most people would spend without thinking twice. But this is where the fear creeps in, because every day, these coins are unknowingly spent, damaged, or lost forever. Imagine handing one over at a gas station or dumping it into a vending machine or letting it sit in a jar until corrosion destroys its value. That's not just money lost. That's opportunity erased. And here's a pattern you need to recognize. Every major coin discovery follows the same emotional arc. First, disbelief, then curiosity, then urgency, and finally, regret from those who waited too long. Let me ask you something directly. What if the next penny you check is the one that changes everything? And more importantly, what if you never check it at all? Now, I want you to picture something. An ordinary afternoon. You're sorting through old coins. Nothing special, just a routine moment. Then suddenly, under the light, something looks off. A doubling on the date. A strange spacing in the lettering. A mint mark that doesn't quite align the way it should. You feel a shift. That small moment becomes electric. Because now you're no longer guessing. You're investigating. And that's where wealth begins, not in luck, but in awareness. Let's bring this back to reality. The 1964 D Lincoln penny with rare mint errors is not just about one coin. It represents a broader truth in the collectible market. Condition, rarity, and timing create exponential value. In today's market, serious collectors are paying aggressive premiums for verified error coins, especially those tied to historically significant mint years like 1964. But here's what makes this moment unique. Interest is rising again. Online auctions are expanding. Private collectors are competing harder. And awareness is spreading faster than ever before. That combination creates something very important: urgency, because when demand increases and supply remains fixed or worse, disappears, values can spike dramatically. And yes, while figures like $965,000 are typically associated with top-tier, professionally graded, verified examples, they represent the extreme upper end of a very real market where condition and rarity drive everything. Now here's the part most people don't talk about. You don't need a vault. You don't need insider access. You just need attention to detail and willingness to look. That's it. But let's be honest for a moment. Most people won't do it. They'll hear this story, feel a spark of curiosity, and then move on with their day. And that's exactly why opportunities like this still exist. Because awareness is not evenly distributed, it never has been. Now imagine this. You go back to your coin jar tonight, or that old box in the garage, or the drawer you haven't opened in years. You start checking, slowly at first, then more carefully, and then something happens. You realize you're no longer just checking coins. You're searching for value hiding in plain sight. And whether you find a rare 1964 D Mint era penny or not, something important has already changed. Your perception of value has shifted forever. But let me leave you with this final thought: in every era, there are silent opportunities that pass unnoticed by the majority. And then there are the few who pause long enough to see what others ignore. Those are the people who find value where no one else thought to look. So the question isn't whether these coins exist. The question is whether you'll take the time to look before they disappear into someone else's collection and someone else's story of what could have been. Because in the world of rare coins, fortune doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it's already in your pocket. If you have ever looked through an old jar of pennies and thought, there's nothing here worth more than face value, you might be sitting on one of the biggest financial surprises in modern coin collecting history. Because today, we are diving deep into one of the most talked about and highly searched Lincoln penny varieties in the United States. The 1962 D Lincoln cent error coin. A coin so ordinary at first glance, yet in rare error conditions, it has been linked to staggering valuations that collectors whisper about. numbers reaching as high as $888,000 in exceptional cases. Now, before you dismiss this as just another coin story, stay with me. Because what you're about to learn could completely change how you look at change in your pocket, coins in old drawers, and even inherited collections that have been sitting untouched for decades. This is not just about a penny. This is about timing, awareness, and recognizing value where others see nothing. The story starts in 1962, a time when the United States was in the middle of economic growth, post-war expansion, and a booming demand for everyday currency. The Denver Mint, marked by the small d on the coin, was producing massive quantities of Lincoln cents to meet nationwide circulation needs. Millions of pennies were struck, stacked, bagged, and shipped without a second thought. To the average worker at the time, it was just another long shift at the mint. Press, strike, release, repeat. But here's where things get interesting. In high-speed production environments like the US Mint, mistakes don't just happen, they escape. And when they do, they become treasures decades later. Imagine this. A coin is struck with a misaligned die, or struck multiple times, or shows doubling in the lettering or date. At the time, nobody notices. It gets mixed into circulation, spent at a grocery store, tossed into a jar, forgotten. And now here's the twist that most people miss. Not all 1962 D pennies are rare. In fact, almost all of them are worth only a few cents today. But a very small number, those with dramatic minting errors, are what collectors aggressively hunt for. And when I say aggressively, I mean serious collectors competing in auctions, private sales, and certified grading markets. Let's pause for a second, because this is where most viewers usually lean back and think, okay, so it's just another coin story. But what if I told you some of these error pennies have been reported in collector circles and high-end listings to reach values that climb into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, even approaching the $888,000 range for extraordinary, certified, and historically significant error examples? And that disbelief is exactly what creates opportunity. Let's move into Act 2. Because here's where the excitement turns into something much more intense. Collectors and dealers don't just look for age. They look for mistakes. And the 1962 D Lincoln cent becomes a prime target when those mistakes show up in dramatic form. Double die obverse, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and unusual minting anomalies are the kinds of errors that transform an ordinary penny into a headline coin. Now imagine holding one of these coins in your hand. You tilt it slightly under light, and suddenly the lettering looks doubled. Liberty appears bold and slightly shadowed. The date looks like it has a ghost behind it. That moment, when realization hits, is exactly what seasoned collectors describe as the pulse moment. Because in that second, a simple penny stops being money and becomes an asset. And here's where I need you to pay attention. Most people miss these coins because they assume treasure looks obvious. Gold bars, shiny silver, something dramatic. But real numismatic wealth is often hidden in boring-looking objects. A scratched penny, a dull copper coin, a coin that looks like it's been through thousands of hands. Let me ask you something seriously. How many pennies have you ignored in the last month alone? And more importantly, what if just one of them wasn't ordinary? Now let's bring in urgency. Because the truth about rare coin markets is this. Once a variety becomes widely known, competition increases fast. Collectors, investors, and dealers begin searching more aggressively. That means the window of undiscovered value slowly narrows over time. But here's the opportunity side that most people never hear clearly. Coins like the 1962 D error cent are still actively being found in collections, estate jars, old piggy banks, and inherited coin stashes. That means discovery is still happening today, not in theory, but in real transactions and real auctions. And when a verified error coin surfaces in top condition, graded by professional services, the bidding can escalate rapidly. That's when you start seeing numbers that shock even experienced collectors. This is where everything comes together, the mindset shift. Because by now you understand something critical. Value is not always visible. It is identified, and identification is a skill. The wealthy mindset in coin collecting is not about luck. It's about awareness, patience, and knowing what details matter when others don't even look twice. A small D mint mark, a slight doubling, a subtle shift in strike alignment. These are not flaws in the eyes of collectors, they are signatures of rarity. And this is where the emotional reality hits. Fear, What if you already spent one of these coins at face value? What if it passed through your hands without you ever noticing? That thought alone is enough to make most people pause and rethink every jar of change they've ever ignored. Excitement. Because the next thought is even more powerful. What if you still have one, sitting in a drawer, in a box, in a forgotten collection, waiting? And urgency, because these coins are not infinite in circulation. Every discovery reduces the unknown pool. Every auction defines clearer value benchmarks. Every serious collector entering the market increases demand pressure. Now picture this final scene. You're sitting at home. You take out a handful of old pennies. Nothing special at first glance. But now you know what to look for. You examine the date, 1962. You check the mint mark, a small D. You rotate the coin under light. And there it is, a subtle doubling, an imperfection that most people would never recognize. In that moment, everything changes. Because you are no longer just someone holding change. You are someone holding potential value. And whether it turns out to be a common penny or a rare error worth significant money, the difference now is awareness. And awareness is what separates overlooked opportunity from financial discovery. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will check their coins, and a very small number will actually find something. The question is, when opportunity hides in plain sight, will you recognize it in time? Because in the world of rare coins, fortune doesn't always announce itself.